Welcome Wargamers, my name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Dweghom Warband box to get you started in Conquest: Last Argument of Kings. Now, if this is your first Warband box review with me, what we're going to do in this video is talk about the contents of the box, how to get started with it. We'll then go unit by unit and kind of explore what all the various options, and there are a lot of options in this box, are available to you, what they do on the table, and what you can kind of expect from them when you start to play. And then lastly, we'll end it off with a discussion on, is this a good value for your money? Is it a good way to start the faction? Are the models representative of what you'll be playing if you play Dweghom? So let's kick off the discussion by talking about what you get in the Warband box. So in the Dweghom Warband box, there's a whole lot of multi-kits, so you can build them as one of two things. You'll get 24 Hold Warriors or Hold Ballistae, depending on how you build them, 12 Dragon Slayers or Hold Thanes, 1 Hold Reg, which is a leader, and 1 Tempered Steel Shaper. So let's start off with more of a bird's eye view. There are so many multi-kits in this that you could buy multiples of this box set and never end up with the same, unit composition a whole lot more than once. Obviously, you have your leaders, which don't have any optional things, but of course you can kit bash them, convert them to your heart's content. But the fact that you get 24 of the Hold Warriors or Hold Ballistae means you could build 12 of each. You could build 24 of one, get a second box, 24 of the other. It's a way to instantly boost all the ranks that you have. And then you get basically one heavy kit. The heavy kit is the Dragon Slayers and the Thanes, where they're like a very elite type of infantry. So either one, they have different roles that we'll explore here in a little bit. What I'm trying to get at, though, is that really, for your money, this is a phenomenal way to start just because of the sheer amount of options available to you. By buying this box, you get access to, 4 of the most common infantry types in this army, and certainly of the ones that are currently available for sale. Now, another thing to note here, when it comes to Conquest, and I'm going to do more videos on this in the future, list building is very unique. Basically, you pick a hero, and they have access to certain units. That's how they kind of keep flavorful armies together, is that certain units can only be in certain warbands type thing. The reason I like this is because all of the various combinations and different options you have available to you through those multi-kits, no matter what you build, you have a hero that can use them. Between the Reg and the Steel Shaper, everything is available to you. So you can't run into a situation where you accidentally build something and all of a sudden you have no place for it in your army. Not that it's insurmountable. Some sets do that with their optional builds. It's just nice to have a little bit of a safety net for new players. It's just like, you can't do anything wrong. Build whatever sounds cool. So what we're going to do now is transfer over to talking about the individual units, and I will go over both options available to you for each of the multi-kits. I'm going to kind of skip over stuff that I've already explained earlier in this video. So if I talk about a unit that has the shield special rule, I'll explain it once, and then from there forward I'll just reference you back to when I first explained it. Now, to fully understand what makes the Dweghom unique in this setting, there are a few things we need to preface, things that matter for all of the units. So let's go do that. So here we are at their rule book. This is available, I'll put a link to it down below, but they're specific army rules. Now, what makes the Dweghom so freaking cool is that they do have a lot of command models, and if you're not familiar with what that means, basically you take a normal dude out of your unit and put a command dude in it. But what makes them unique is they have quite a few of these once per army type things. Very powerful pieces that you can put into various units throughout your army, and they'll kind of bolster the forces of what your faction can do, what their unit can do, what the heroes attached to that unit can do, stuff like that. So there's a whole lot of customization in this. But that being said, as a general rule that we'll explore, through this video, I don't cover points very much, but on the whole, Dweghom tend to be a somewhat lower model count, slower army that tends to have a lot of toughness and defense and firepower. They hit very, very hard and are hard to move, but they do have some drawbacks in terms of how many dudes you can field in a unit, meaning they're just more expensive per guy, and then how fast that they can move across the battlefield. And so I wanted to talk about these command models because we're going to be going into 4 totally different units. These things are going to come up. So let's just explore them now, and this way you'll be filled in when we look at them in the context of the individual units that they can be dropped into. First up is the Exemplar. While the Exemplar is alive, stands in the regiment, meaning the unit he's a part of, have +1 resolve. In addition, any character in the regiment has +1 defense while fighting a dual action. So he's a fantastic guy for helping with, what is essentially people running away from battle shock, as well as helping your characters, and that's going to be a huge thing that we cover, have +1 defense while in dual action. Dual actions are going to be massive for this army. They're so cool. So just kind of put a pin in that. Next, we have the Herald of Fire, once per army. While the Herald of Fire is alive, stands in the regiment have the Fury draw event. In addition, any characters in the regiment has +1 clash. Again, we're going to see this theme repeated. Give something to the unit and the hero with them. So this one gives you the Fury event. The next one is Herald of Magma. Again, once per army. While the Herald of Magma is alive, stands in the regiment have the Aura of Death. Special rule. In addition, any character in the regiment has +1 attack. So the Aura of Death is basically for every stand that's engaged in that unit, there's the chance that your enemy will take a wound just by being near them. They're kind of exuding this death energy, or in this case thematically, it's like they're firing magma and flames all around them. Next is the Herald of Stone, again once per army. While he's alive, the regiment has the Bastion draw event, buffing up their defense, and this one as well has +1 defense for your character in the regiment while fighting a dual action. So this is functionally, it's like the Exemplar rule. The difference is he also gives you Bastion to your unit rather than the +1 resolve of the Exemplar. Then there is the Mansur Apprentice, who is sort of like a wizard apprentice, if you will, once per army. While he's alive, the regiment has the Fearless special rule and +1 resolve. An army can only include a single Mansur. In addition, any character in the regiment has the Flurry and Cleave special rules while fighting a dual action. So he does have a few more kind of caveats to him. I'm not the biggest fan of that one because it does limit how many Mansurs you can have in your army, and that's like the actual hero unit. However, he does really buff them up quite a bit between Flurry and Cleave while fighting a dual action. That is pretty baller. And the last two, we're past the once per army special character ones. There's a Priest. While the Priest is alive, the stand in the regiments have the Fearless special rule. That's fantastic. And if you're curious what Fearless does, basically it allows you to ignore negative modifiers from big monsters or that kind of stuff. It just kind of helps make sure that your units don't run away too easily if they get flanked or something like that. And the last option here is the Flame Caster. While he's alive, stands in the regiment have the Torrential Fire special rule if the target is within 8 inches. And I pulled it up here for you. That special rule is incredible for shooting units. Unless firing at long range, meaning more than half the range of the actual attack, each successful hit this regiment inflicts generates an additional ranged attack. These additional ranged attack cannot further generate any more. So flame casters, you might put them in a unit of guys with big old guns and magma cannons and all this stuff. We'll get to what they are, but he can really buff them up, and that's only within 8 inches though, so that's kind of a thing. You don't want your shooting guys to get charged too much, but it is a fantastic way to just pile drive shooting attacks into the enemy. Now, for the first set of kits that you get, okay, you have 2 boxes of what can either be built as Hold Warriors or Hold Ballista. That's 24 models collectively. You could build 12 and 12. You could go 24 of one or 24 of the other. We're going to explore the various options and kind of comment on what would probably be a smart setup here. And we're going to start off with the Humble Hold Warrior. He is an infantry model, class medium, and that's going to be something you see quite a bit to kind of bring their slow speed into the tabletop. A lot of the classes here are medium. So what I mean by that is, if you're not familiar with Conquest, you don't start with all your units on the table. Light units come in pretty quickly, the first round pretty easily, and then mediums come in, and then heavies. The reason that's important is those all happen on different turns. Now, the caveat being light units cannot get objectives, like they can't claim them, but they can contest them. So you can rush them up, but you're not getting points for them. The Hold Warriors, on the other hand, can claim objectives, which is not a bad thing for a basic infantry. And that's really what they are, is basic infantry. They have a movement of 5 inches, a volley of 1, but they don't have a gun, so it don't matter. Clash of 2, which is pretty good. 1 attack, 1 wound, resolve of 2, defense 2, and no evasion. They have the shield special rule, so what that essentially means is if they get +1 defense if they're attacked from the front. Just like all infantry, there are 3 stands at the minimum, 4 dudes a stand, and they have pretty much access to anything. And this is really a point that we're going to drive home when it comes to these specific models, specifically the Hold Warrior type thing, like the Hold Warriors, Hold Thanes, and the Hold Reg, which is the leader. There's so much customization available to you that you can really kit these units out to do anything. The profile that I just went through is like a pretty solid generic profile, right? I mean, it's a little bit slow, but they hit, on a 1 or a 2, 1 attacks each, resolve is good, the defense is good, they have shield, like, they're tough little dudes, but you can crank that to 11 with everything from, standard bearers, more stands, put leaders in there, they have access to all of the different herald options and the priest. The only thing they can't really do is have the, looks like the Apprentice Mansur in their unit, but that's just fine. I mean, all these things are fantastic. You can really kit this guy out to be whatever you want. And so this is one option to have, if you're unsure of what to build, honestly, building up some Hold Warriors is not a bad choice at all, because at this point, they are Mainstay, meaning they are like the basic, unit that just about any of the heroes can take in this entire faction, so you won't be making a bad decision there. And again, they are highly customizable with all the different leader options. And even if you just take them in minimum sizes to just hop on objectives or whatever, they tend to be beefier than a lot of the other units kind of in that same class or point area. So again, there's quite a bit of game here going on. Now next up are the Hold Ballistae, and these are the other build from the same kit that you can do. The Hold Ballistae are a very unique type of unit that I think requires a lot of thought into how you're going to use them. So here's what I mean. They're an infantry, they're light, so they will come on before the Hold Warriors, but they cannot claim objectives, but they have a movement of 5, volley 2, which does matter this time, clash of 1, attack 1, wound 1, resolve 2, defense 2, evasion 0. So again, they're pretty stocky. Resolve is great. Volley of 2 matters because in their special rules, they have a gun. These guys are rocking some awesome weapons. Barrage 1, meaning they get 1 shot, 24 inches, so they have a 24-inch range. You get half your shots if it's at full range. If it's under half the range, so if it's 12 inches or closer, you'll get your full armament of shots. And these shots are all armor piercing, so they are pretty devastating if you let them get close to the enemy. But what's interesting is that they also have the shield special rule, just like the other ones. So what you get is this highly defensible gun wall that can surge forward early in the game, sit on an objective. Again, they can't claim it, but they can contest it. So your opponent has to have more models there than the Hold Ballistae. So that's interesting to me. So rush them forward, plant those shields on an objective, and just shoot as much as you can while the enemy comes towards you. And they also have a full complement of stuff. They also have the Heralds of Fire, Magma, and Stone. The Magma one is the one that gives you like your crazy awesome bullet shots if the enemy is within 8 inches that we mentioned before. So that definitely might be an option for them. Again, if your whole purpose is to just surge them forward and plant on an objective while the rest of your army comes up behind them, that's definitely a way that you can go. The real difference here is you're trading a medium melee unit for a light ranged unit. So again, I don't think that there's truly a wrong choice here. I would say that if you're really unsure of what to go for, the Hold Warriors are definitely going to be much more straightforward, whereas the Hold Ballistae, I think, have a great part of the army or place in the army, but rather they require a little bit more nuance and understanding, getting the most out of what units are light versus medium, and how to play towards the objectives. Because they're not killy in the same way as some of the other units that we're going to talk about. But I do believe that they have a place in this faction. So next we're going to talk about the Hold Thanes. Now, this is the other kit that you get. You'll get 12 either Hold Thanes or Dragon Slayers. We're going to cover these guys first. And to put it very briefly, these are Warriors Plus. Okay, so you have your basic hold warriors. Again, a generic kit. It's very customizable because there's so many options you can put with them that, quite frankly, you can really kit these guys out to do just about anything. They can play defensively, offensively, somewhere in the middle with a wizard attached to them. Very versatile unit. So again, if you're unsure how to build these guys, Thanes are definitely not a bad choice. We're going to walk through their profile. It's infantry type, but they are heavy. So they're going to come in pretty much dead last. So they're going to, but remember, in Conquest, games go on for many more turns than in other war games. So they're going to get in there. They're going to do some action, but it's going to take them a bit to get there. Move into 5, volley 1, that's fine, they don't have a gun. Clash of 3 is phenomenal. So half the time they are hitting, and that's before you do anything to kind of buff them up. 1 attack each. You have 1 wound each, resolve 3, defense 3, evasion 0. Again, they're tanky. They're not going to be losing guys to like battle shock or anything like that. Now for special rules, they have cleave 1, which is they ignore 1 bit of defense when they're attacking. And then also shield, again, it's a very common thing in this army is shield. So functionally, if they get into combat, they are defense 4, right? So most of the time they're shrugging off everything. Their resolve is great, and then they're basically putting a -1 modifier on your defense. So that's just awesome. They can make a fantastic just wall. If you add in, what is it? The Herald of Stone for 50 points on these guys, he essentially makes them defense 5 because they get the Bastion Draw event, which means their defense goes up by 1. Tack on the shields to that, and you have a beefy unit that just does not want to move. So if this would be a great unit for if you go the defensive route. What I would say is they come on the board when the heavies start to come on, surge them forward directly towards an objective, and you are trying to get them there as fast as possible, plant them there, and they will be very hard to shift. But these are a unit that they're looking for an objective, right? Because they come on so late in the game, they don't really want to chase down enemies or anything like that. They're very slow. They're not going to be doing that too well, but if you can charge them into the enemy on an objective, like your opponent has when you're trying to take it from them, these guys are going to be extremely hard to shift. But right above their profile are the Dragon Slayers, and these to me are the winners. Like, when you talk about cool models that just sound like, evil angry dwarves, the Dragon Slayers are it. And basically, where all the other units are kind of walking this line between versatility with how you kit them out and how you use them, the Dragon Slayers go, nah, forget all that. We are all offense. 100% offense, okay? So they clock in. These are the most expensive units that you can buy from this in terms of points. They're infantry. They're heavy, so they are coming on a little bit later. Movement 5, volley 1 doesn't matter. Clash 4. So they start there, which is just freaking dope. So most every single attack you roll is going to land. They only have 1 attack each, but again, they're part of a large unit, so there'll be multiple attacks. 1 wound each, resolve 4, defense 4. So those are big numbers when it comes to their tankiness. And evasion of 2, which is interesting because it essentially makes them a little bit more survivable because no amount of cleave can cut through them. Meaning, even if they go against a unit that has enough, negative modifiers to defense, they will always have some form of save with the evasion. But their special rule, and the thing you take them for, is cleave 4. So what that means, to put that in context, the hold things that I was just talking about, like let's say you're doing a mirror match, Dweghom versus Dweghom. The hold things are on an objective. The Dragon Slayers come up, and with cleave 4, they completely bypass all of the defenses that the hold thing has. It's enough, rend is what we call it in Age of Sigmar, but it's enough of a negative modifier to the defense that they don't matter. This is the ultimate unit for a real good right hook punch. They can carve through things. Again, they're very slow. They're very limited when it comes to the leader options. They can't take the Heralds of Fire and Magma and all those crazy things. All you can do for them is increase the number of stands as well as their standard bearer, which I do highly recommend because your first turn you come in, they're going to move. The standard bearer lets you get +1 to your second move action for the turn. And then reroll with charges and that kind of stuff. So again, you're going to want that just to make sure that these guys can get into combat as quickly as possible. But once they are there, they are absolute blenders. And so again, I'm just going to bring it down here. You have your choices between a unit of Dragon Slayers and a unit of Hold Thanes. Choose for you. Again, you know, if you're not sure how you want to build them, either defensively or offensively, I do think the Thanes have a great place. They're definitely not as like immediately exciting sounding, but you can tune them to do whatever you want. Whereas the Dragon Slayers, if you're like, I need an offensive unit, they're your man. So that's it for your units. Again, you get 2 unit options between the Hold Warriors and the Hold Ballistae. You can do whatever you want there. And then you get 1 kit that you can choose between the Dragon Slayers and the Hold Thanes. Now again, I can't emphasize enough, there's no wrong choice. What sounds the most fun to me, if I'm totally honest with you, is 2 things of Warriors and 1 thing of Dragon Slayers. It just seems like a good base to be able to like start your army with, and then you can add the fun stuff in the guns and things like that after that. But let's talk about the heroes that you get. Starting off with the Hold Reg. This is basically your warlord, your very combat-y type of hero who is pretty dang cool. So he is an infantry, he is heavy with his class, which does matter for when he can come on the board. Movement of 5, volley 1, clash 4, which is wonderful, 6 attacks, 4 wounds, 5 resolve, so whatever unit he's in will take his resolve, which is wonderful. Defense 4 and no evasion. He's a character, and he has cleave. Just 1 though, so he's not going to be hacking and slashing through stuff quite as quickly as the Dragon Slayers. Now, one thing that's interesting about him is that for his mainstay, so if you're not familiar with Conquest, the Warband options here, these are all the units that he has access to. So he can take Hold Warriors, Hold Ballistae, and Hold Thanes as mainstay, meaning he can have a whole bunch of them as much as he wants. And restricted is Dragon Slayer, Stone Forged, Fire Forged, and Ironclad Drake. What that means is, for the purposes of this set, for every Dragon Slayer unit you want to take with him, you have to have 1 of his mainstay options. That's all that means. Now, he is allowed to have a Mansur Apprentice with him as sort of like a minor entourage on his stand as well. The retinues and masteries, I'm going to wait until the new edition, the 1.5 edition, drops to cover those things, because we do know they're being shooken up just a smidge. So basically, these are just ways to make him more powerful. He can be really, really combat-y, as well as very tactical with how he gets on the board and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm going to cover that stuff later, but really what this guy represents is a way to bring a real character killer onto the table, okay? These guys are brutal. I don't mean like the Hold race specifically. What I mean is Dweghom, because all of those units that we mentioned, no matter which ones you go for, you know, whichever interests you, are phenomenal delivery systems for heroes to run up and then offer duels to your opponent. So like, let's say you have you throw him in with a unit, they rush forward, and then when it's the Rake's turn, he can then challenge the hero that's in the enemy unit, and because of the buffs that are here, meaning he's just a good warrior, but then also remember all of the heralds and those kinds of buffs that you can get from the unit attachments that also buff the hero with them, you can turn these guys into a pretty nasty dual machine. Not to mention the fact that some of the relics here are pretty dang cool. I'm not going to cover them in super detail, but at the end here I will review a few of them. So just taking a brief look at the ways to kind of modify with relics, you have everything from during a dual action, the character rerolls all failed to hit rolls, which is wonderful for those 6 attacks that he has. You can give it +2 defense while at least half its stands are within zonal terrain. As far as other stuff goes, I don't know, just kind of pick your flavor. +1 wound, +1 defense. There's a few different weapon options that are great. You can give him cleave 3 instead of cleave 1, which is quite incredible. Again, making him a better and better killer to go rush forward and basically pick a fight with all the enemy heroes. And lastly is the Tempered Steel Shaper. So you get a wizard in your box, which I think is fantastic, giving you like a melee hero and then a wizard to kind of explore all the different facets of the game. He is a infantry model, medium, so he can kind of join most of the units that you have available to you. He has a movement of 5, volley 3, doesn't really matter. Clash of 2, attacks 4, wounds 4, resolve 3, and defense 4. So he is a wizard. He's not meant to be in duels or in combat, but he is a wizard of level 5. So anytime you want to cast a spell, you roll 5 dice. That's pretty reliable. I like that quite a bit. And he can kind of shoot a magic missile barrage for 20 inches. So it's just going to be a few little extra attacks here and there, not a ton. He as well has options to take a relic at the indicated points cost down below, and for spells, he has to pick one of the following 3. So we have Unmake Armor, Hone Blades, and Temper Plate. Let's look at what they do. Hone Blades is a casting range of 12. You need to get at least 3 successes, and all these things, when scaling, what that means is the larger the unit, the harder it is to cast. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, the effects here for Honed Blades is the target regiment has +1 clash until the end of the turn, so you hit better. Okay, I like that. That's a fantastic general static buff. Just +1 clash is real good, especially if you can get it onto a unit that's charging, because that will work with the +1 you get to clash for when you charge. Or Inspire if you're already in combat. Now the next thing is Temper Plate. Again, 12 inches, you need 3 and it scales. Target regiment has +1 evasion until the end of the turn, which is an interesting one, simply because a lot of these units, they either have great evasion, like the Dragon Slayers having 2, that's wonderful, or none, so really it wouldn't quite matter. I find that one rather dubious on units that don't already have some measure of evasion, like the Dragon Slayers, but for them, it could be incredible. And the last one here is Unmake Armor. So as opposed to the other 2, which take a unit from your army and buff them up, this one is a debuff to your enemy. Target regiment has -1 defense until the end of the turn. So to put that in perspective, if he were to put this on an enemy, and it's essentially the same as increasing the cleave value of your unit by 1. It's like having, armor piercing, but with extra steps. But that being said, it's pretty cool. I like it quite a bit. Especially, Unmake Armor is wonderful if your opponent brings in smaller units that are very tough, like say, brutes or cavalry or something like that, where the scaling isn't going to be really an impediment to you whatsoever. You can just modify their defense down a little bit to make it a little easier for your guys to crush them. So back on his entry here, for his mainstay, just like we saw before, he has Hold Warriors, Hold Ballistae are his mainstay. So depending on how you build those 2 kits that you get, you'll be more than likely to have at least something to put him with. So that's a fantastic choice there. The Stone Forged and Fire Forged, not in this set, but they're cool models. And then the Steel Forged is a restricted option for him. Now, one thing I didn't mention about these heroes, and I want to tack it on here at the end, is supremacy abilities. This is a once per game thing that you can do where your general, depending on what kind of leader you have in charge of your army, can declare at the supremacy stage they're going to use this, and it affects them for the whole turn. So let's take a look at the ones we have access to. First one is the Hold rank at the bottom there, the Enduring Mountain. Your regiments ignore 1 point of cleave or 1 point of armor piercing from enemy attacks for this turn in this supremacy ability. This is activated. So it makes your guys a little bit more resilient to the armor piercing of any kind of attacks that your opponents are throwing at you. Not bad. It's pretty defensive, to be honest with you, but if you know that you are going against an enemy that does have access to a lot of cleave or armor piercing, you can pick one turn where you're going to be in the thick of it and just kind of shrug it off a little bit. That, in contrast to the Tempered Steel Shaper that you get, Living Metal. Instantly heal each of your regiments 4 wounds. Now that is very impressive simply because of the way healing works in Conquest. You're going to be bringing models back. It's not just topping off wounds on existing models. You can bring them back if you put it on an infantry unit, which you just so happen to have at least 3 of with this box set. Again, these guys are more expensive points-wise because of how resilient they tend to be. So getting 4 guys back just on a turn randomly for showing up because you took your Steel Shaper as your warlord, I like that quite a bit. And it could, it's not necessarily going to be like a game-changing thing, but ultimately it just allows you to stay in there a little bit longer, maybe contest an objective, maybe you get to stand back, and all of a sudden, you're in the race to keep an objective rather than losing it. And so at the end here, I kind of want to put it all together, right? When you step back and look at these units individually, how do they look when they have the context of being in a single army? I'm going to be honest with you, this is quite possibly one of the best starter sets out there. And the reason I say that is, I believe it's $150 at normal retail. Hey, if you use the link down below, you get an extra 10% off. But essentially, you get all the mainstays that you would want. I mean, the Hold Warriors are mainstay pretty much for everybody, I believe. So that's a fantastic option. If you just want to play around with heroes and do Hero Hammer and all these crazy things, you can definitely do that. The Dragon Slayers are just cool. I mean, let's just be honest, they're just cool. What's great about this is with all the multi-kit options and the way you can accrue mainstay choices, once you buy this box, you can realistically just kind of go buy all the cool models that you like the look of. You know, all the minimum requirements for your army can be really taken care of with this set, and then it's just cool toys from that point forward. The fact that these are all multi-kits for the actual units, drastically increases the rebuyability of this box. You could buy 2 or 3 of these and just have a full army with tons of options, and all those things are available to you for army building. And again, do whatever you want with the extra heroes. You can either have multiple, hold regs, multiple steel shapers, which is not a bad idea, or just kit bash them into something else. But ultimately, when I look at these starter sets, I'm like, the real value in a starter set is teaching people the game, right? And when I look at this, you have ranged attacks, melee attacks, you're learning how to use cleave, supremacy abilities, the healing things, how to build an army with mainstays, and that kind of stuff. Like, the actual nuts and bolts of the rules expose new players to just about every single aspect of playing Conquest, including magic and all, you know what I mean? Like, it gives you a little bit of a taste for everything. And that's like not something you can really put a price on, because you will see starter sets that for various games where the army is so hyper-specific into one playstyle that they don't teach new players about certain other things. So, like, a good example would be, if you're familiar with Warhammer 40k, like, there are armies that just literally have no psychic powers. So, like, there's no magic in them whatsoever, but it's still a core part of the game for everybody else. So this set is phenomenal in the sense that it really does expose players to just about every part of Conquest. They're going to be a lower model count army. They're going to be slower because they're going to be coming onto the board generally a little bit later than your opponent. You will have to play straight for the objective if it's not just smash each other and kill each other, which is totally fine too. But beyond that, you can build this kit in a way that you're not committing to any one play style. Like, if you build 2 things of Hold Warriors and this thing of Hold Thanes, you can kit those out to kind of lean towards offense or lean towards defense and never really make a wrong choice. Or you could go nuts and just have like 2 things of Hold Ballistae who are there to plant on objectives and shoot arrows at people while the Dragon Slayers come in from behind and just absolute rage tear through everything. So wrapping it up here at the end, I evaluate all starter sets for every game by 2 main factors. Is that 1, are the models in this set representative of the greater faction? So, like, are you going to buy this set of models and then be surprised by what the rest of the army looks like? Is the line coherent? And then secondly, are you actually going to use these units once you are fully invested in the game, right? Like, let's say this is your starter set for Dweghom, but in a year from now, when you have tons of options and that kind of stuff as you slowly build your collection, are you actually going to use these models? There's nothing in this set that is aesthetically different than what you'll find across the rest of the Dweghom range. In fact, it only gets cooler, right? These are your basic infantry models to kind of fill out your ranks, but there are tons of really cool toys in this faction that are great models that just look absolutely phenomenal, that once you've established that infantry base, you can then start buying those and layering them on, and they all look very cohesive aesthetically, but they look super rad. As for the second part, where you actually use them, well, yes, simply because so many of the units have mainstay build options, so you'll want mainstay choices for your warbands to be able to fill out the minimum requirements, and then you can throw on the cool stuff on top of that. They are, again, if you go with the versatile builds, you can use them for just about anything, which is wonderful. Even if it's just a minimum size thing of warriors, just so you can throw, Steel Shaper in with them, something like that, just to have it, I think would be a wonderful choice. So yes, you will definitely use these models as you are playing the game. But friends, that's going to be it for me. Again, if you would like to get this set, go ahead and click on the link down below. It'll bring you over to the Parabellum page. And it just to kind of be honest with you, it's an affiliate link. It does go to help support the channel. But more than that, it gives you some savings on your top of your starting your collection and gets you closer to playing Conquest. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.